Hey guys, Yips here, coming out with another video, and today I want to take some time to talk about Affliction Warlock on Mythic Sylvanas. Affliction Warlock is an excellent spec on Mythic Sylvanas. I would say it's arguably better than Demonology in a majority of aspects. That one aspect where it is worse in the fact that it just takes more damage, and I can tell you straight up, I did feel more scared playing Affliction than I did playing Demolock. I was more frequently on scary moments, as in moments where I had to be actively using defensives, worrying about my life pool, compared to when I was playing Demo Lock where I could pretty much tank anything I wanted and I was fine. So keep that in mind as you're progressing, that Demonology is more tanky. However, at very important parts of the boss fight, Affliction does shine quite well. Those moments being Phase 1 arrow damage, Affliction is actually quite excellent at, and in Phase 2, the add damage and the boss damage is by far and away better than Demonology, and in Phase 3, it does extremely competitive DPS to Demo Warlocks. So, AF, very good spec on Mythic Sylvanas, very good in terms of its damage profile, and let's talk a little bit about why that is. So AF on Mythic Sylvanas, what does it do really well? So I mentioned the arrow damage, so I'm going to show you guys really briefly on training dummies why it does really good arrow damage in Phase 1, where a lot of the times guilds require classes like BM Hunters or MM Hunters, Windwalker Monks, Rep Pallies to carry arrow sets. You can actually play an Affliction Warlock, which sounds really weird, but you can actually play an AF Warlock and carry an arrow set. So I'll show you guys what that looks like really briefly on 3 targets, and we'll analyze it in the kill video as well. So the way that I do it is I pre-Dark Soul, Phantom Singularity, Soul Rot, Seed, Dark Glare, Trinket, and then I spam Malefic Rupture. Now, that's a little bit of a scuffed way of doing it. Obviously, on 4 targets, the damage is more. You're in a raid setting, you have buffs and things like that. However, if you have more globals, you can actually put Agony on a few of them and do some more damage that way as well. So, looking at that in the kill video, I'll show you on logs how much damage I actually do to that arrow set. It's quite a lot, and you can actually end up soloing that set as an Affliction Warlock in an exceptionally reasonable amount of time. So Afta's very good P1 arrow damage, very good P2 add damage, boss DPS, very good Phase 3 boss DPS. Just an excellent spec overall. So, that being said, let's go really quick and take a look at some Warcraft logs and some parts of the kill video just to analyze a little bit. So here we have AF Warlock on Mythic Sylvanas. So this is me. And if you're looking at the peaks, these are every time I use my 2 minutes, right? But if you look at this one in particular here, this is the Domination Arrow Set 3. And our guild was really struggling with it. And I knew that Demonology sucked at that arrow set relative to playing Affliction. So if you take a look at enemy damage taken, Domination Arrow Set number 3, you can see I did 324k deep damage to it. Almost 36k DPS over 9 seconds. So our arrow set died in 9 seconds, which is an extremely good amount of time for it to die in. I would say anywhere between 9 and 12 seconds you're doing well. Anything more than that is getting a little bit spooky. And so AFS does extremely well on this particular set. And if you were to compare to, let's just look at a random demo lock parse. And let's take a look at Domination Arrow. Let me find it here. I believe that is this. Yeah. And if you look at Demo Lock, it's not doing very much at all. And that's because it can't. It's ramping on the boss at this time. It's preparing for Dark Sentinel damage. I've played Demonology on this boss. I know what it's doing here. I know why it doesn't do a lot of arrow damage here. It makes sense. It's just our guild needed that. And if you look, AF is doing extremely competitive damage to the Hunter. Their set died in 10.2 seconds. Our set died in 9.1. If you look at the DPS, I did 35.7. They did 37.9. So very similar to a Hunter in terms of damage to that arrow set. However, if you look at boss damage, it's actually really good. So, just back up a minute here. Let's take a look at the boss damage in the Phase 2 DPS. So in Phase 2, AF is really strong because it has huge cooldowns for each and every platform if you want them. And so on the first app platform, it can actually own. So if you look at my damage to the Goliath and the Soul Judge, 350k, 170k, very, very good damage on the first burn here. On the boss burn, doing 700, almost 700k damage on the first and second burn combined. I even messed up in this video. I didn't pot on the second boss burn early enough. I missed out on a lot of damage there. And then obviously Colossus damage, we had other people cooldowning it, but still doing 150k to it, just doing my part and helping kill it. And Phase 2 overall, very, very strong spec. Very strong for Warlock. If you were to compare it to a Demo Lock in Phase 2, and these are like the top Demo Locks on the fight on logs right now, outperforming it by quite a bit in terms of damage done to those particular portions of the boss fight. And then moving on to phase 3, you can see Locke doing one of the top single targets here. I do get power infusion because it is excellent for AF, but in phase 3 doing almost 3 million boss DPS, and if you look at phase 3 for these top demo locks, obviously the first one doing quite a bit more, however the second demo lock in this guild, 8.1k, whereas I'm doing 7.9k. Very, very, very competitive. And if you look at phase 2 and phase 3 combined in terms of boss damage for these demo locks, and you were to take a brief look at my affliction lock for these phases, 3.61 versus 3.75. Right, and this is the top demo lock for boss damage. I couldn't find a demo lock aside from this one that was doing more boss DPS than my AF Warlock, and you could argue that the arrow damage in P1 plus the add damage that he does in P2 is better than the damage that the Demon Lock does. So I'm going to go and say it. Afflock is extremely competitive with Demonology, so feel free to play it on this particular boss encounter. This Demon Lock is also eye level 249. I am 246, so take that for what you will. AF is very good on boss DPS. Don't let people fool you. It's very good. And it does extremely well on the ad platforms and the domination arrow damage. So let's go ahead and look at the kill poll and just talk briefly about some of the relevant moments. So just back up a few seconds here so you get to see the start of the encounter. Here we go. So as you can tell by the opener here, the way the AF functions is it does all of its damage in very small moments. So you see here, I'm popping all of my cooldowns, and you see me rising up on the meter. AF does very good burst damage during its Dark Soul, during its Soul Rot windows, especially playing the Dreamweaver where you get that haste puddle on the ground whenever you press your Soul Rot. So very, very good damage during its burst. Outside of its burst, kind of potato. But there's a lot of downtime on this fight, which lets your cooldowns come back up, which means that those cooldowns are a lot stronger relative to maybe some other classes. So anyways, every time that arrows come out, I just tend to use them to get soul shards back. I drain them, I dot them with a little bit of agony here and there. Not really focused too much on doing damage to the arrow sets number 1. Venthyr Boomkins are popping off on those. Not really too focused on doing damage on arrow sets 2 as well, because we have other classes that are cooldowning them and that are taken care of. You want to coordinate with your guild which classes are doing damage to each arrow set because they're very important to die quickly. And in terms of boss DPS in phase 1, you'll see I start to stop min-maxing my boss DPS later on in the encounter, and even in the opener I'm not really thinking too much about doing damage to the boss. I'm just doing, I don't know how to describe it, sort of saving my energy for phase 2 and phase 3, not really playing perfectly in phase 1 in terms of DPS, just sort of playing very safe, because we have to stop damage in phase 1 anyways. The DPS check does not matter in phase 1, so only really focusing on that once we get to phase 2 and phase 3. So arrow set comes out, I just seed one side, go ahead and port it to the Veil, put my dots back on the boss, just chilling, and the important moment comes up in a few seconds here. So this is getting to the important part. So I have my Dark Soul, I have my Soul Rot, I have my Phantom Singularity, I have my Trinket, so I have all the tools I need to solo this arrow set coming up, which is why I'm playing Affliction. So you're going to see here in a second what goes on there. So boss comes down with the Veil, I'm making sure I have high soul shards, dots on the boss, and I'm going to channel my Trinket here. So channeling my Trinket, getting ready for the burst, going to call for power infusion, and you'll see the rotation happen here. So Soul Rot, Phantom Singularity, Seed of Corruption, pressing my Dark Glare, hopefully in a second here. Maybe I don't even press it, don't even need it, just went in one huge jam. And you can see the damage there was actually insane. And it's actually probably good I didn't Dark Glare there, because that means I do less boss damage, which means we push at a more ideal time, which is good. Although, I do recommend pressing Dark Glare there. What happened was I probably pressed it while I was on GCD and it didn't go off. Either way, arrow damage, absolutely insane. You can see I just annihilate and basically solo that set. Can just go back here and watch it again. Soul Rot, Phantom Singularity, Seed, pressing the buttons, going in, and the set just gets absolutely annihilated. And that's what you want. That's what you want to happen, whether it's from you doing it as a Warlock, whether it's a Hunter doing it, whatever, it's what you want. Anyways, blinking back here, going to stop focusing on doing boss damage and just hitting these ads here. Seed of Corruption is more damage than Malefic Rupture on these ads. However, one of the main reasons I cast MR is because it's a faster cast and I have to do a lot of dodging here, and I don't want to get stuck in a seed cast and want to like greed to finish it. I just cast my MRs because I know it's fast enough. I know it's enough damage. It's not super important. And then we get to this part of the phase. All I try to do during this part of the encounter is I try to get a PS out and a seed out. And then outside of that, I cast some agonies, and I'm just trying to live. Seed, Phantom Singularity, dodging, let your boomkins carry you on this part of the encounter, make sure you survive. Don't worry too much about doing a lot of damage here because AF just isn't great at this part of the fight. But neither is Demonology, neither is Destro, so it just sort of do what it do. But you can do decent damage to one set using Phantom Singularity and getting a seed out. You can still do like 100k damage to a set or something. You know, it's not nothing, but it's definitely not optimal. Either way, transitioning into the harder stages of the boss encounter, I shouldn't say harder, phase 1 is pretty difficult, but transitioning into the parts of the fight where damage matters, which is this phase, I pre-use my trinket as we're running across. When we land here, going to set up my damage on these ads. What you can do is you can set up port behind you if you're worried about the veil, something that I did quite often. Either way, getting my cooldowns out quickly, not too worried about doing it optimally. Doing it quickly is more important here. So Phantom Singularity, Soul Rot, Seed, Agony, Siphon Life, UA, Haunt, Dark Lair. And you do a lot of damage here to this particular part of the encounter on these two ads. And the important part is to get it out fast, because you see here, this part of the burn on the platform does not last very long. And since it doesn't last very long, it's just much more effective to get your damage out quickly so you're able to push on to the next phase fast. It also makes it so your cooldowns come up faster at this part of the encounter, which is quite good. So just running across the platform as Warlock do. I'm going to go ahead and make the gateway for the guild. And now we're just chilling and we're waiting to pop our 1 minutes. And I always recommend using your cooldowns after the haunting wave and after you've taken the gateway for the veil here. So the veil happens, the boss basically becomes immune because you can't target her. And then as soon as you gate, you press your cooldowns. So Phantom Singularity into Soul Rod into Rapture Spam. And then you get all of your damage off before the boss goes immune, which is ideal and what you want. And it's a lot easier to get your damage off here rather than press it before the veil happens. So I 100% recommend, don't even really try it. I've tested it, it doesn't really work. Use your damage after the veil. 100% worth. So boss becomes immune, running to the next bit here. Just fighting against this Colossus. Nothing really too crazy happens here. You can use a Phantom Singularity on him, but do not use Soul Rot. I don't think Soul Rot timing works out well enough to where you can really use it and get an effective use on the boss. So running over here, making the gateway, waiting for the veil again. So haunting waves into veil is the way that the pattern works. And you see my Phantom Singularity is just coming off in time, and that's why I don't recommend using Soul Rot. So you take the gate and you pop all of your cooldowns as quickly as possible here. You're on a little bit of a crunch because the boss is going immune soon, but you can still get a lot of your DPS off during this window. Running Halaterra is pretty good on this boss fight. It allows you to Halaterra the ads when they spawn, which is pretty strong. It's like an instant AoE CC. It's pretty good. Mortal Coil is also definitely a competitive option for some self-healing. And then you're transitioning into the last phase. And the last phase is quite simple in terms of how you're doing damage. The only thing that I will say is you want to prepare yourself for Dreamweaver. Dreamweaver circles require you to stand still in order to get your damage off. So you see here I'm running into the middle of the boss room because I know that if I was to sit back there, the tank and our Demon Hunter would be dropping petals on me and I would have to move out of my Dreamweaver circle. And that's the only really min-maxing that you have to be doing in this phase, aside from just playing naturally well, is making sure that you're positioning yourself for your Dreamweaver buffs, those circles, in order to maximize your single target. So where you start on each platform in terms of your Dreamweaver buffs is actually quite important. So you see here, I move back into the center before it's necessary in order to use my Dreamweaver. And I call someone else to actually soak there because I know that I want to be in the center of the boss room to get my Dreamweaver off on CD because I need to CD on CD in order to have it up for the end of the boss encounter. So I get in the middle to use my Dreamweaver because I know the Banshee's Fury is coming out and I know that I don't want to be on the edge, and then I move back over to the edge. So that's really the important part of this phase, is just to know your timings for your Dreamweaver. And so this part of the encounter, you basically press it as soon as the boss comes back down, and you see I pre-position instead of on the outside, actually on the inside because I know I need to be stacked. And so I use my Dreamweaver there. And then moving on, my next cooldown set comes up here. Again, I use it in the center because of that AoE. And so I can always stay in my Dreamweaver puddles, and that was the thing that I had to kind of focus on in this particular part in the boss encounter, was knowing where to stand in order to maximize my DPS to stay still for that. Moving on to the last platform, some very basic stuff. You get one CD set off, and don't be impatient here. Don't be confused here and want to save your cooldowns because we're lusting soon. Make sure that you're using that Dreamweaver on CD, and you will get your cooldowns in lust if you do it properly. So you see here, we press lust right now. So in a few seconds here, you can see it happening. We're going to be lusting, and boom. And you can see I have 28 seconds left on my Dreamweaver, which means I'll have 10 seconds of overlap with lust, which is more than enough. So just kind of vibing here on the boss, waiting for my cooldowns, and you'll see my last cooldown set happen here in 10 seconds. And I'm not being impatient. I'm not like, oh my god, the boss is so low, I need to use my cooldowns. No, I'm like being smart about it, being like, I have enough time to get my cooldowns off before the boss dies. Don't need to panic. Pop my stuff. Use my dark lair. Get the damage out on the boss. Win the encounter. Easy clap. So, AF, very, very competitive. Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3 DPS with every class in the game. Very competitive with Demonology. I would say it's by far and away better than Destro. I don't think Destro is actually good on this encounter comparatively to AF or Demo. I think AF and Demo cover everything that you need to on this fight. If you find a niche out there for playing Destro, it might be like consistent arrow damage in P1 with Cataclysm, which isn't that much, but it's something with that in Havoc. And then in Phase 2, perhaps you could save damage for every ad platform, and that would be useful because you do more damage to the orbs in Phase 2, so that could be a reason. But I personally just think AF and Destro or AF and Demonology 100% the way to play on this boss encounter. So hopefully this gave you guys some insight on why I chose to play Affliction on Sylvanas and why it's so good. And yeah, so thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.